All right, this was from a conversation that probably happened about 2 years ago with Chris Doe. He's the closest thing I have to a mentor, and I was getting ready to launch this pilot project for this YouTube series on this channel. And I was pretty nervous about it because the format was pretty unique. I don't know I'd really seen that format been used. I'm not really comfortable talking on camera yet. I think I'll get there one day, but I'm a lot more comfortable doing voiceovers. And I'm more comfortable doing candid or lifestyle or documentary shots where I'm not acting or reading from a script. So I wanted him to kind of talk me through that, get some permission to do that maybe. And more than that, I was going to be talking about some controversial topics. This stuff that they don't really teach you in school about business is that there's going to be some business breakups along the way, most likely. And it was a really good conversation. It was really valuable to me. Super grateful for his time. If you don't know who he is, you can check out the Christo on Instagram or the future, but if you're watching this channel, you probably know who he is already. The first part, we talk about transparency. I start out with the question, how transparent should you be? Or like, how transparent is too transparent when it comes to this sort of thing? The second part that I've broken up is about business partnerships and when or if you should ever get into a business partnership, how you should structure it. So this is some pretty high level business stuff. We don't go super nitty gritty into like anything design, but if you're interested in making content or brand storytelling, that sort of thing, you might find it interesting. All right, I hope you enjoy. We talked about this being kind of a therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I have some more interesting things that have happened as far as business goes. And these things are so interesting that it's like something that you'd see in a movie about tech companies or, just stuff that it's like, how does this even happen? I can share briefly an example or two.
Okay.
As far as like business drama goes, that's kind of my next question is like, how transparent do you be about that? Because some people could find that very interesting and very useful to avoid pitfalls from real things that have happened. But it seems like everybody keeps that very professional, very hush hush.
Yeah. Again, it depends on what your ultimate goal is. If it's to grow a channel and to build a community by sharing lessons learned in the battlefield, then you can take more risk. If your goal is to grow clients and make a ton of money and hire people and grow a firm, you're going to err on the other side, which is let's be a little bit more careful about what we share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just got off the call with Sagi Haviv in his TED Talk. He shared a client call that she left a voicemail about giving him art direction for a logo he's working on for the Conservation International.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wild, like all over the place what she was saying. And then what he did was he brought in an animator to animate every iteration of the logo based on her feedback, and some were pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
But he asked for her permission to do that first, and she's like, fine. And the reason why I think he can ask that is because at the end, they loved the results. They have a strong relationship, and she thought, yeah, it was pretty funny, and it's done in good humor, so it's all fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they can laugh about it themselves, and then it's okay. So people who don't have a good sense of humor, not going to be good. And some people might even wind up suing you for slander. You have to kind of think about that.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you say, I'm going to share drama for the purposes of growth and making both of us look good, then that's okay. And if the drama is on your part, that's even better because you're not saying that they screwed up, you're saying I screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
So taking ownership of the drama is also another good point of view. But plus, it's also not creating a victim mentality, which I think is a good message overall.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What about keeping it anonymous?
That's okay.
Basically eliminating the slander part.
Yeah. So you're going to abstract it. So you're going to talk about a client in the sports apparel industry. and you're not going to mention them by name, and you're only going to
And
talk
they're
about
actually
things.
in another industry.
No, you could use the same
Or-
industry. It's fine.
Yeah.
Because you're not saying, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about, only that person would know it's them.
Yeah.
And I think you're okay there. But
Okay.
don't take legal advice from a graphic designer.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. I guess I'm just interested your take on it, because I'll touch briefly on a couple things that have happened. So I mentioned on the call a couple weeks ago that I had an investor, and I was like, yeah, not a great idea. But it was right when I was starting out. I started the agency for less than a year, and someone wanted to partner up. And so I had one partner. I was like, you get a third and you get a third, because you're going to give us money and we're all going to work together. So turns out less than a year later, I'm walking away from the company because different things had happened. Basically, we had a lot of work to be done, and I was locked out of all the bank accounts in the company. I basically lost control of it, so I'm just like, I'm leaving this, screw this. And I started doing research, and I find out that one of my business partners is being sued by his previous business partner for the same thing. And so after I kind of resigned from it and left Austin, I got in contact with this previous business partner, and he confirms pretty much everything that I had to say. And he's like, man, I really feel bad that I didn't come out with this. I didn't write anything about this earlier. He's like, maybe if I would have publicly come out with it, then it would prevented it from happening to you. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I feel an obligation to kind of whistle blow what's going on right here. And he felt really passionate to like write something up. And a couple weeks later, he's like, my attorney finally talked me out of it. Like, sorry, dude, because he was going to kind of help support me on it. And I just never came out with anything on it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I could have, this guy runs incubators. And so I'm like, man, I could be saving other people from going into the same trap that I did.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of think about this and try to be very objective about your motivation. Is it about helping other people, or is it about revenge? Just like, you screwed me, I'll screw you. And then you can go down a very dark path, Mason, and I just want to caution you about that, okay? You've heard stories from me about many different bad business deals, and I try to say that here's what I learned from this experience. So I make it less about them and what I can walk away with. Like I said before, I don't want to play victim. So when a sales agent of ours goes back on her word against us and says, well, I didn't quit. Now you're locked in with me for another year, and the only way you can get out of this is you pay me off. Okay? So I learned then that it was really about me being more diligent with reading my own contracts and not accepting what somebody says as the final determination, because then it becomes a he said, she said. And when it comes to business, take care of your business. And that's really the point of that, and not to say like, oh, everybody watch out, never work with this rep. They're dishonest and they're going to steal your money. It wasn't about that at all. That's the only reason why I would tell that story. And I've told stories like that. So one,
You would tell the story about how you needed to be more diligent?
Yeah, I would say, here's what happened, and here's what I learned in this. And if you ever get yourself in a situation like this, to prevent all of this, this is what you need to do. Understand your contracts. And then when somebody says, I quit or you're fired, you need to get it in writing. And you want to confirm that. Otherwise, you walk away thinking, okay, fine, we're done. And you're moving on. And what you're doing is you're going to impose your value system on other people. So when I say I'm going to do something, that's it, and that's final. But when other people say it, I'm assuming they have the same value system that I have. And that's obviously not the case. Even from family member to family member, we all make different decisions. So making that assumption is a dangerous thing to play. And if you're willing to gamble, as I did, it cost me $30,000 to get out of this thing. And that's a lot of money. It's not like I have $30,000 to throw around. And even if I did, it would be better spent even buying a camera or something else other than just paying somebody not to work for me.
Yeah.
So that's the lesson that I learned, right? So for your thing, it's like, oftentimes when you're in the tech space, you're going to come across angel investors, people who have a reputation for launching or building incubators and all this kind of stuff. Before you do that, here are 4 things or 5 things that I want you to think about. Why do you need the money? How will you spend the money? Did you do your homework? Because in my story, this is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so it's not about blaming other people. It's about taking ownership over what's happened to you in your life and seeing what you can change. Because that's going to be something that you can grow from, and it's something that somebody else can grow from if they listen. Otherwise, it's like, oh yeah, there's shady people in the world, and let's throw shade on them. It doesn't help anybody.
I think that's a really great point. Like, obviously, I could have avoided that whole situation if I would have just done more background research on someone.
Right.
So there's a good lesson in that alone.
And how could you do that? You Google their name?
Yeah.
Is there a database?
You could Google their name next to the word lawsuit.
Yeah, or scam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's usually what you do. You just type in whatever the negative thing and see what pops up, right?
Yep.
So that could be one of your lessons.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because, it doesn't feel right when I don't take any of the blame in the narrative, because I first of all, I know that's there, but sometimes when shady things do happen, it's really easy to just be like, yeah, well, that was messed up, so I wasn't the one at fault,
Right. And then you're doomed to repeat that again.
Yeah.
So if you read Darren Hardy's book, The Compound Effect, he talks about a couple of different concepts, but the number one thing is that if you only remember one thing from reading this book, and it's the ultimate game changer, is to take 100% responsibility for your life. So I don't even mean to tell you take some of the blame, take all of the blame, because you got yourself in that situation, and the only thing that you can do moving forward is to make better decisions. So the minute that you start blaming people is you're absconding from your own responsibilities, and you're not taking account for the things that you did to get yourself in there, okay? And he gives a very simple analogy. He's like, when you think, like when you're a married person, how much of that relationship is your responsibility? And he said, well, most people would say 50-50. And you're like, oh, that's pretty good. That sounds fair. He goes, no. The only way you can ensure that you have a successful, loving, compassionate, empathetic marriage is to take 100% responsibility. So when somebody comes home and is angry at you, instead of like responding in emotion, they're actually sending you a cry for help, because the anger isn't about what's going on right then and there, but it's about something much deeper. So then you can say, I want to send you a message of love. So how can I help? What is going on right now? I want to understand your world a little bit better. And then you could take control of that situation. Saying that, well, they should do this and they should talk to me in this way, and I don't like that tone, really disempowers you. So take 100% responsibility.
That's the second time you've recommended that book to me now, so definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, it's on my top 10 book list.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so Seth Godin talks about how he doesn't like authenticity.
Yeah. And
he mentioned it when you interviewed him. He did it a couple weeks earlier on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he's like, I don't want an authentic surgeon who walks in and says, I forget the example he used, but like
I'm having a bad day.
Yeah,
I'm not feeling it today.
And I was talking to someone about this and saying, I kind of do wish that the surgeon would tell me that, because like, say their parent just died, or even their dog or something that's like majorly going to affect them, I think that's relevant to my surgery. So I kind of lean the other way. Like, I wonder what your thoughts are on authenticity.
So I think Seth is reacting to some very authentic personalities out in the world that kind of share so openly, and their whole life and their whole persona and their whole brand image is really about that. And that's what they have said to themselves. This is the value and the thing that I want to be known for. And it's easy for young people to see that and say, oh, that's how you become famous and influential, and then to go down that same route and then just sit there and cry to camera and do all. But it's like they haven't done anything with their lives. And there can only be so much space for authentic personalities. I think he's talking about it from a social media marketing point of view. Whereas for me, I choose very carefully how much I want to share. And I always try to think about, how is this relevant to people? How is this going to be a benefit to anybody? And I don't want to sit there and create like what my friend Derek Sy calls pity porn. I don't want to tell you how miserable my life is so you can feel sad for me and cry your eyes out, because it doesn't do anything. Right? So I think you have to kind of think about what it is that you want to achieve in your life, where you want to take your company, your brand, and what you feel fulfillment doing. And once you answer those questions, then you can probably figure out, yeah, this is the level of authenticity that I want to share.
So actually, this is how my current episode's starting out right now. It's a shot of me, which is funny. I thought you guys were talking about this on the groups the other day. You were showing your chipped tooth.
Yeah.
And the other guy was talking about how he feels self-conscious being on camera because he's missing a tooth or whatever.
Yeah, he's got some dental issues.
And I got punched by one of my business partners, and it starts out and it's just me just with the camera and I'm missing my tooth.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, there's blood everywhere. And I'm like, it's probably not the craziest thing that's happened to me in the course of starting a business, but it's definitely like, if I wanted to grab someone's attention, it's like using the if it bleed, it leads thing. So I kind of like want to briefly touch on that. I think it's an interesting part of business. I think one of my mottos, or not mottos, but like one of my themes could be like tough love and how hard it's going to be starting a business. And man, I mean, you don't want to tell people it's going to be too easy, but you don't want to tell them you're going to be getting punched in the face by business partners and stuff either. So what are your thoughts on that? That's really bringing in like reality TV show type stuff.
Right. I think you understand how to grab somebody's attention. The thing is, once you grab their attention, what it is that you want to tell them, because that's going to determine if they're going to stay with you, right? In that story that you're referencing, somebody in the pro group had some dental issues, and they say, like, I don't feel confident to go out there and to speak to clients, and it's going to hurt my business. But I need business in order to get the dental work that I need to. So they're kind of stuck in a really bad situation. It's very real, and I feel bad for them. And we all have things that we don't like about ourselves, our eyes, or our eyebrows, our nose, our teeth, or our beard, whatever it is that you have. And I think the only way that you come to terms with that is to say, does the world really care about that little defect that I see as much as I do? And chances are it's not. I'm not going around and showing that chipped tooth that I had in Utah because I went endo over a bicycle because someone was blocking the pathway, right? I did a lot of stupid things to get there, first of all. I don't show that just because I want to grab somebody's attention. I show it because I just want to let them know we all have things that we don't like about ourselves, and the only way we can overcome that is to put it out there, and then that empowers you. I've seen people who don't have limbs come out onto a stage and talk and present to a whole group of people. Or there's a TED video from this woman who says, I'm the ugliest woman in the world. And she's talking about her condition. Like, she can't put on weight no matter what she eats, and she has all kinds of issues, right? And she's just going to own it. So the minute you own it, the power reverts back to you. So don't hide from it, right? If I'm a short guy, I'm not going to wear platform shoes to call attention to the fact that I'm a short guy. I'm just going to be a short guy and just try to deal with it.
As far as trying to mix in some reality TV show elements into business storytelling, you're not going to tell me that that's an absolutely horrible idea?
No, not at all. Not at all. What I would do is I would advise you to start with the business storytelling part, and then think about the little pinch of salt or spice that you got to throw in from time to time to get people to watch. So we have some kind of unofficial formula that we look at. Like the content we produce has to provide value to people, but it also has to entertain them, because if they're not entertained, they will not watch, and then therefore mission number one is undone. You can't learn something if you don't watch it. So we have to kind of find that. So we're not above doing something dramatic, wild, crazy, or bombastic at the beginning of the video, or to use a piece of music or an interesting thumbnail or a title to get people to watch, but then we have to deliver. I want to caution you against the opposite, which is to do a really clickbaity title with a really crazy thumbnail, something sexual, something blood or whatever, something horrific, and then you watch it, it's like, this is terrible. This has nothing to do with that, because that's going to earn you a bounce, and you keep doing that, you get punished in the algorithm.
Yeah. So I have to address it in some healthy way to come out with an outcome that other people could learn from it. You know, I don't know if you'd agree with me or not. I know that you did have a video saying that if you could do things over again, you wouldn't have a partner. So I know that you've probably had some butting heads with partners, but
Yep.
I kind of want people to know that, like, that's the kind of things that are going to happen when, especially when really A-type personalities get together and they're all really passionate. And, you know, I've been punched in the face by a lot of business partners, but honestly, one of the problems is me and my friends usually like to drink a lot. And I know you don't drink, so I'm sure you're aware of the fact that it makes people really aggressive.
They can, right? They either get really like
can.
passive or they get really aggressive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of just really A-type personalities. I like to surround myself with people who are really go-getters, and I think a lot of times that can, like, if there's people starting out that are those types of people, that's definitely going to come up. Maybe they're not going to be getting punched in the face and stuff like that, but there's going to be moments like that. So I kind of want to be able to do that through storytelling, is being like, how do we come out with a healthy outcome, a journey through this that can help other people get through those hard moments? Because I don't think it's the hardest part is learning how to sell design or doing your bookkeeping. It's, for me, it's usually like, can a relationship stay this strong with people? So I wanted to ask you what your opinion is on partnerships now, and if you're absolutely against partnerships, how do you define a partnership? Would you define like splitting something as a partnership, or if you have partners that have small percentages, is that easier to deal with?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you this. As much as I don't like partners, I'm so smart that I've had 4 partners in my life. And for some reason, I haven't learned that lesson. So there's a good chance that no matter what I say to you or you say to our audience or to ourselves, there's this compulsion to go out and get somebody to do the thing that you hate doing and to offer them up something for the company. And over time, what you do is you realize it wasn't that hard to do, and you resent yourself and you take it out on them. And that's why the partnership doesn't work, right? It's very difficult to find somebody that's your equal in all ways. Think about how hard it is to find your soulmate and to stay married. How many people break up and split up and get a divorce from their marriage? A very high percentage in America, at least 50%. And so if we're saying a marriage is a pledge forever, man, what does a business partnership look like, right? So in the very beginning, it almost is always, there's a hole you feel, and it's like that Shel Silverstein book, The Missing Piece. You roll around and you're missing a piece and you're looking for that thing to make you complete and whole. So in the beginning it was financial. Like, I already had the confidence. I think I had the work. But for some reason, I needed that little push. And so when I met business partners who had money, the one thing I didn't have, which was business experience and money, I jumped at the opportunity. They owned 51% of my company for theoretically $100,000 investment. Luckily for me, it didn't work out for them. So when they couldn't supply me with the rest of the capital that I needed to run the company, they had to forfeit the partnership. So that's partnership number 1. And what I learned in that one was, I don't need a partner. All I needed to do was believe that I could do it and go for it, because I never needed their money in the first place. So that was lesson number 1. Then my brother says, hey, if you needed a partner, I'll be happy to invest in your company. Again, I was like, this is my brother. He's going to give me some money, which he did. And then he and I wound up working together. But ultimately, I was growing the company and doing most of the work. And this was one of those relationships that ended it just fine, because I said, hey, brother, can I buy you out? I appreciate everything you've done. And he did do a lot. And he said, I just want to buy you out. I want to continue on without you. And he's like, that's fine. Just return the money I loaned you. I don't need your... And I'm like, wow, okay. So that was partnership number 2. Partnership number 3 was I wanted to get into a different line of business that I didn't have any expertise in. So this was not about money, because many years later I had money and I had space. So what I did was I started another business with a person, and I was thinking, okay, we're going to do partnership and we're going to do this. But just working with this person for a little while, I realized, oh my God, they have very different ways of managing money, people, work, and what they understand to be profit. That's totally different from what I think. So then I had to say to myself, I don't think this is a good relationship. I had to break that one off. And my last relationship is the one that you probably know about, is with Jose, who was the founder of the school and who made me a partner in his company. And I followed his lead because he did so many things I didn't do. He was charismatic. He understood how to make video for the internet, and he was an extrovert. He did all the things that I didn't do, but he didn't do the things that I needed him to do, which was to be a good, responsible, hardworking business person to run the company. So after the magic wore off, I was like, how are we going to build a company? Because I don't like to have hobbies. I like to read comic books. That's a hobby. I don't want to have a business relationship that winds up becoming a hobby. So I had to learn that very painful lesson. And that was probably one of the more difficult partnerships to break up, because we had so many assets that were kind of combined, and back money, all kinds of issues and emotional things. We had a professional relationship, and then I needed to continue on. And how was I going to do that? So what I've made a promise to myself from this point forward is to not take on any more business partners. People can invest in a company. I can, if I choose to, give shares or some form of ownership to people that work for me or that are loyal, that bring things to the table, but I'm not going to give them any control or any decision-making power. So they're considered non-voting shares if I were to issue it out. But I want to do it very differently. I want to be this benevolent dictator. I want to run the company the way I want to run it, but I want to look after the people that actually help me to make it possible. And I'm a pretty fair-minded guy. So when it comes to there's money to be shared, I give it as much as I can. When it comes to decisions, we share the decision-making process. But at the end of the day, if I need to do something very different and radical, I'm just going to say, guys, appreciate your opinion and input, but I got to do it my way. And as the person who has the risk here, I'm just going to do it. That's the right that I have as the business owner. I hope you guys can get behind that.
That's great. So, also, just kind of more technical question real quick. Do you do invest in equity in it, or is that how you like to do things? So someone has to take 4 years to vest equity if that's what they're getting?
I don't know much about that, because right now I'm 100% owner of the company, and I'm not dealing with any of that stuff right now.
Okay.
Because if you boil it down, why do people want shares of a company? Because the company is going to be sold or valued somewhere at much higher than it is today, and so then you can exercise that when a sale is made, or a merger or an acquisition, and then you could have a piece of that, right? That's one way. Mm-hmm. And if you say hey, if I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain, if that ever happens, I'm going to take care of my employees, my team, then it's just an agreement. Then we have the trust or we do not have the trust, okay? Yeah. So that's really what that is. The other thing is they want to have a profit share, and they don't necessarily need the headaches or the liability that comes with true ownership. So most people really just want profit sharing and not even equity in the company. Because if we're to go south, are you willing to sell things that you own to be able to support the company when the cash call comes? Will you be able to do that? Are you interested in that? If we get sued, do you want a percentage of that liability or not? Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's where it gets really tricky. So we have this grand opportunity that's in front of us, Mason, as the future. We're a product company and no longer a service company. I have a lot more predictability about what it is that we're doing. We have intellectual property that we own, and we can create an equitable business model and a way of working that is unlike anything we've done in the last 23 years. So we're working on these business models. Once I have them resolved, I will share it publicly as to how we're doing this, how we're going to incentivize and keep people here, and also to reward them. It's not just about saying, I got to pay you to be here. I want to create the most dynamic and rewarding place to work that's not only good for your soul, but good for your pocketbook as well. So I'll let you know how that works out. But we're working on it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you were talking about partnerships and making yourself whole through another person because you're only half. And I've always liked that analogy with relationships, but I never thought about that with partnerships, even though I usually relate the two. So that's interesting, but it made me think about like Y Combinator and how a lot of incubator type companies, like they almost require that. I don't know if you've heard about that, but I think just recently now they'll let solo people into Y Combinator, but it was almost a requirement. So I'm wondering, like, is there something to that, that like two people doing dynamic opposites is actually the best possible route?
Yeah, I mean, it works for a lot of companies, right? It really does. Look at Google. Those guys, is it Larry Page and Sergey? And they formed something. So I don't. It works for people. It doesn't work for me. I'm too headstrong. I'm too opinionated. My risk tolerance is way higher than most people, and I could be seen as reckless by some. And I enjoy that degree of kind of risk taking, and that's what I think I need to have in terms of a mindset. For other kinds of companies, that's not their mission. That's not what they're about. So everybody's got their flavor of it. I'm just telling you what my flavor of it is.
Yeah. I think you'd mentioned this as a past issue maybe, but I feel like maybe my problem with partnerships, one big thing could be what you're saying as well, but also like I think you mentioned this, but my work ethic is just really heavy. Like if I have a goal, I can sit there for 48 hours straight if I have to and just pound something out. And usually like the people I partner with don't have that type of dedication.
Yep.
And they're still really dedicated, but then the resentment starts seeding after. It's like, well, it's 50-50 or whatever, and it's like, well, I'm putting in much more work. So I'm wondering if there's just certain personality type people that just shouldn't split control of a company.
I don't know. I don't know. A lot of actors have managers and they have agents, and they seem to be okay with how they pay them and what they do for them. And they pay a high amount, but they're mostly dysfunctional when it comes to those things. So it seems to work out okay. They're horrible at negotiations, so that's why they have a manager, right? And they don't want to deal with the uncomfortableness of getting paid or paying somebody. And that seems to work for them. And though they're totally in charge, the manager gets a good percentage of their revenue. And that's a relationship that works for them. So they still get to make the decision, but they had advisors who take a pretty high percentage, relatively speaking, of the money, the amount of money that they've earned. So that works for them. I don't know. I think the first question you want to ask yourself is, if you're going to get into a partnership, what hole are you trying to fill? And are you sure that's worth giving up control?
Yeah.
And equity in the business that you're going to work day and night for? And do you have agreement and alignment with what each person's going to do? So here's an example. Here's a classic example. We know, you and I know so many creatives out there that it's like, I love to do the work. I hate the going out to market. I hate doing the cold calling. I hate doing the sales. I don't want to deal with any of that. If somebody makes that pain point go away, I'm willing to give them 50% of the company. And if that's truly the case, find yourself a business partner and work with them and make sure they can deliver. Have some performance benchmarks. Have a clear understanding of how many hours will you work versus me. So we know this. Production takes a lot of time and energy. There's a lot of labor involved. But sales didn't work like that. They could be out of the office and doing sales. They could be going to a party and doing sales. They could be reading an email or the newspaper and doing sales.
Yeah.
And their hours are very different because they're going to wake up early and they're going to go to bed really early. And so they're not going to be grinding it out. As you get busier, they're going to seem to be working less, relatively speaking, than you, because now you're managing a lot of production. Try to imagine what that looks like into the future. And if you're okay with that, then it's going to work. So here's where people get messed up about this. They start thinking in a very kind of like inside the bubble way, where they seem to be doing all the important hard work. But then they forgot that the agreement that you made in the early days was you go out and get the work, because they forgot how hard it is to get work. So ultimately what happens is they split. They wind up resenting the other person. They don't talk to each other anymore. And then their work dries up. And then they remember, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I remember. And that's why I had a business partner. And I have made this mistake in my own past. I really have. I had an amazing executive producer. He sold. I paid him a lot. He wanted more. And I was like, hey, that's enough. And he thought different. So he left. And then we saw our business go into not free fall, but in a declining way. Like it was not trending upwards anymore. So he had some part to do with that. And then I realized then, that when he was saying, hey, will you pay me more? He was saying to me, without using those words, if you don't pay me more, I'm going to leave because I need to make more money. It's a business decision. It has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what he was saying to me. And I should have made a business decision for the benefit of the company. I could have afforded to pay him more.
Yeah. You just forgot how much you hated doing that part.
Or how much his contribution was to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. I feel like you've covered a lot of big stuff for me.
Okay.
How much more time do you have left? Should we get going?
I think we should get going. Is there a way that you want to wrap this up or open it up now that we know what we're talking about?
Well, I think I still want to go ahead with putting some of these crazy stories in my business vlog, but I think I'm seeing how important it is to not even blame at all. Like instead of like 10% blame or anything, it's just zero blame, 100% blame right here.
Or ownership. I like
And
the word ownership. Take ownership. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that could frame it in a way that would be interesting to people, where they don't think that I'm trying to do the wrong thing, trying to get attention by telling crazy stories and stuff. I always want it to be clear that I'm trying to help people succeed through these stories. So I think I just need to emphasize that and really go crazy with it, even if it's a little self-deprecating. Just like, my fault,
right?
You know?
Or what I learned. So instead of saying blame, say take ownership. Instead of saying fault, say here's what I learned. So these little twists of words seem very innocent and innocuous to people, but that can actually really change your mind and how you feel about things. So I'm a person who's trying to be very mindful of the words that I choose to use in my head to describe certain situations, because what I think impacts how I feel. How I feel impacts what I do, and what I do influences my destiny. So we kind of have to choose certain kinds of words. And I think for you, Mason, it would be good for you to kind of just reflect and think about this, to share openly and honestly, but always through the lens of what is it that I hope somebody's going to learn from this, and use that. Now, people will misread your intention, and there's nothing you can do about that. What you want to do is just have clarity for yourself. This is what I want to do. And forgive me if it doesn't come out right. And just consistently do that, and you'll be okay. Then you don't worry too much about what people think, like you're trying to brag, or you're trying to put down somebody else, or you're trying to throw shade on somebody else. That's not your point. Yeah. But you have to be clear inside. And it can be easily muddied because there's resentment, there's anger, there's bitterness, there's all kinds of emotions that are going on there. Just write down, here's my purpose, here's my objective, and I'm going to use it as my compass, my North Star. So when I veer off the path, I'm going to course correct, I'm going to fix that. I mean, there's an outrageous amount of haters and people who are going to say things to you and have already said to me. It's like, whatever, you can judge me on one video if you want. And you know what's really life-affirming to me, at least? I read a comment recently in one of our videos on YouTube. Somebody said, you know, when I first watched this, I hated you, your personality, you're just so arrogant. This and that. She went on and on and on. But she said that, but I returned to the video, other videos, and I watched a few more, and now I've realized that I misread who you were. I misread your intention. And so I wrote back a nice little comment to her saying, well, thanks for giving me the chance. Thanks for sticking it out and for even posting this. I appreciate that. Right? So that's it. So that's to say that don't read too much into somebody's feedback or reaction to you. Play the long game, play the infinite game, and just know what you're about, and you'll be fine.
How do you have to say that? Like, how specifically do you have to say up front what someone's going to learn? Because another piece of feedback I've had is that I'm kind of building tension throughout it, and it kind of all relieves at the end, but everyone said, like, yeah, I wasn't quite sure where you were going for a minute there. Okay. But then I figured it out. But I kind of left it a little abstract so that it only came together at the end, because I don't want to be so literal that it's like, here's what we're going to learn today, guys. This, and this. I want it to kind of confuse them for a minute. But I don't know if that's a good tactic.
That's up to you. That's not a tactic I would take personally, because you have to tell me why I would even want to tune in to watch. Yeah. And so if you follow the rule of copywriting, right, the headline makes you read the subhead. The subhead makes you read the first sentence of the body paragraph. The first sentence in the paragraph makes you read the rest of the paragraph. The first paragraph makes you read the second paragraph. Now, if any one of these things fail, guess what? They turn the page and we're done. So if you say to yourself, well, the thumbnail and the title gets people to tune in. And the first 15 seconds, first 10 seconds is where you'll see the biggest drop off in terms of people watching your content. We look at it too. It's like some videos, the graph is like this. It just falls off the cliff. And so we're thinking to ourselves, we got to get right into it really fast and give them a reason to care and to keep watching. So you'll notice, I don't know if you're a fan of Lost, the TV series, right? By J.J. Abrams. The way that they wrote those episodes was that it was always a cliffhanger before the commercial break. And so they became masters of writing mini stories and cliffhangers so that people would watch. Unfortunately, they forgot what story they're trying to tell as a larger arc. I think they were just making up stuff to keep you from turning away, but they didn't know what story they were building. So I definitely would encourage you, and this is just my opinion, to start in with, guys, here's why you need to watch and tell me the reason why. Doesn't have to be the answer, but you got to give me a compelling reason to keep watching. And then you keep editing what you say or see so that I'm driven to know what the answer is each and every time. But if I don't even know what the question is, the answer is going to become somewhat meaningless to me.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. I want to find a really tasteful way to do that. So that'll take some thought, but that's cool.
Let me ask you a quick question here.
Yeah.
Do you watch a lot of independent films?
Yeah.
You do?
Fair amount.
Do you prefer those over those the tentpole pictures?
The tentpole pictures? What does that mean?
The tentpole is like what the studio makes their money on. It's all the blockbusters, the sequels, the extravaganzas, the pictures that cost $100 million. Or do you like watching those like Sundance pick, audience choice, critics review?
I mean, kind of in the middle, like, the Coen Brothers type stuff too.
Oh, that's not an indie film at all. The Coen Brothers is not an indie film. I'm talking about.
But it's not like Transformers or something.
Right. Okay. So those are like studio pictures and all that kind of stuff. So,
but yeah, one of my favorite movies I just saw it's in this Free Solo is Sundance. So yeah,
okay,
for sure.
All right. So the reason why I asked you this is for a while, when I was going to art school, going to design school, I was like, we got to go to the art theater and we got to watch these indie films because everybody's like, this is it. And then you watch an indie film and it doesn't follow cinematic structure. The sound design's a piece of crap. At the end of the story, it just ends abruptly. The girl kicks the ball and I'm like, what? So after a few of those pictures, I'm like, I'm just tired of watching these experimental things. People have figured out in a way to package a 90-minute story in a way that is compelling and satisfying for me on all levels, emotionally, visually, artistically, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying to me, or what I hear you saying to me is this, is that I know there's a formula and it works really well. I don't want to do that. I want to do it this other way. And you're calling that distasteful. Like, not everything is Transformers. And even if Transformers is really bad, it brings in a ton of money at the box office. So Michael Bay knows what he's doing, obviously. Now, it's not for all of us. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But you kind of just question yourself. And I'm sure you like animation and books and things like that. They all follow a formula.
Mm-hmm.
The good ones do. They understand. Here's the hero's journey, right? The hero with 1,000 faces. And Joseph Campbell figured this out decades ago. And everybody's still using it today because it works.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, just like you know how a good website works or a good logo, it follows a certain formula. And everybody who tries to I don't know the formula, or I hate the formula, and they do something, every once in a while, there will be this mega, like, wow, that's so weird and different. But in truth, those are few and far between. So I'm not a person who likes to gamble.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put in the work to make a great video. I want to make sure people see it. I want to make sure that people feel that I'm helping them. And that's more important to me than saying, I'm an avant-garde YouTuber. I'm going to do something like Dadaist or some kind of French new wave thing. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
All
yeah,
right.
I don't think I'm completely against that, but
Yeah.
I just want to find a happy medium that's not I don't want to try and replicate Casey Neistat or
Oh, nor should you.
exactly. So I want it
Yeah.
to be its own thing that does follow a structure.
But let me tell you something, though. So this is where I think a lot of people get confused, is that you can abstract structure and understand that and put in your own ingredients. It's like, I know that I have to cook this vegetable first before I do that meat or add this spice or marinate this thing. But the protein, the vegetables, and the final form it takes is going to be very different. But to not follow structure, you're asking for experimental films. And those become very difficult to watch, right? So here's something else I want to tell you. Even if you tried, you could not be Casey and you can't be me, just as I can't be anybody else, because it's always filtered through our voice and our lens, and I would not be scared of that at all. So the first form of learning something is to mimic it, to copy it as best as you can, shot for shot, point for point, and then you're like, okay, I like this. I'm getting used to this, but I want to change this one variable. And then with that structure in place, you change one thing and it gets good. It's like, ooh, or that was bad. Let me try another one. And then you keep changing it, right? To me, The Matrix was one of those, like, it's one of my all-time favorite films, right? And it was so groundbreaking because it did so many different things. But if you understood anything about the Wachowskis, they're really into comics, they're into kung fu movies, and they just bring a lot of Asian influences that are totally not original, but completely original for a Western film with visual effects and about the internet. And that's why it was so revolutionary and so mind-boggling good and just so innovative. And that's it. So they just pulled from a source that most people weren't aware of, at least in this country. And there's a quote somewhere. It's that originality is one's ability to hide the source material. So I'm not saying don't copy. I'm saying copy, but just copy from the sides, from where people are not looking, the margins.
So you're saying if I really want to do something that's different, take something that's already worked from another place.
That's right. Something that nobody's
Bring
paying
it
attention.
into YouTube.
That's right. Maybe you're watching Hamilton, the play, and you're like, ooh, I really like how they finished the final act there, and there's some structure that I think would be really good. And so nobody's looking at Hamilton as a source of inspiration to do YouTube. The problem is they're looking at Marquez Brownlee, or they're looking at Peter McKinnon or Casey Neistat, and they're just going to try and replicate that back onto YouTube. That's what we call derivative works, right? It just feels derivative, like it's a bad copy of a copy.
Yeah.
Go back to the source and you'll be fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay?
That's what I needed.
But like making it up on your own, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. All right.
I had one more question I wrote down.
Okay.
So you were mentioning how people talk shit to you, and everybody that's online, it's going to happen, especially when you start hitting 10,000 fans, 100,000 fans. There's just people that feel poorly about themselves and they want to go out there and say something. And I think that's one part of like fear for me, diving in. And I think probably like everybody else in the pro group probably experienced the same thing, because I'm a fairly confident person, but yeah, like when I'm getting in front of the pro group to do a presentation or whatever, I'm still nervous. I'm like, if I'm going on YouTube, I'm going to be super nervous about what people are going to say about my story and myself. So like, do you have any experiences or tips or secrets for like how you just like dove into the flame and just like accepted that and made it happen? Because I feel like not only me, but a lot of people that holds back.
Yeah. There's a couple things I'm going to be able to answer this, and I think this is a good way to wrap up this conversation, okay? I did not dive into it. If you watch our early videos, it was taking steps. Like, I didn't know how to swim, so I sat in the kid side of the pool. I acclimated to the water, and each time I would make a bigger step towards learning how to swim on my own. And I think that's a great way to start. It's incredible. I mean, if you watch early Neistat videos or Marquez Brownlee or any of those videos, you're like, oh, they were really uncomfortable and awkward on camera. So the trick is to keep doing it till you get better. So one of the things that I talk about is if you want to win at the game, you got to play it the longest. Play the long game. I think Seth Godin said something very similar, probably much better than the way I just said it. Actually, for sure, he said it much better. So you want to be able to play it for as long as possible. So don't make gigantic bets. Make small bets. Take small steps. Make small gambles. That would be okay. Okay. The other thing is this: is if everybody loves what you're saying and nobody's angry at you, you're not saying anything interesting to anybody. And I don't look at the negative comments as a reflection as to the content wasn't good, because I look at the comments that are like amazingly, overwhelmingly positive. And I'm like, yeah, if I have to take a position, somebody's going to disagree with me, and I actually want them to disagree because it can't be universal. If it's universal, everybody already knows it. So you should look forward to this, saying to yourself, people are not going to agree with me, but there's going to be 95% that are going to agree, or 10%. But I'm for the 10%.
Yeah.
I don't care about the other 90. You go on with your lives, no problem. And the last little tip I can give you or two more tips, is when somebody makes a negative comment, they're full of anger and spite, or they're just trolling you. The best way is to just ignore it. It doesn't hurt you at all. The only person who gets to live in that kind of cesspool of emotions is that person. When you respond to it and you dive in and you're engaged on that emotional level, they actually win. They wanted to make you feel bad, and now you feel bad. So if you can't handle it, just delete it or ignore it. That'll be fine. And lastly, you said this. It's like, it's true. Everybody that gets in front of the camera that knows this is going to be broadcast to the world, and it's kind of forever, because there are sites that archive everything that we put out on the internet, and you can go back in the time machine and look at it, is that you said you're filled up with nervousness. And Simon Sinek talked about this. It's like, what makes you nervous? Well, your heart rate goes up, you speak faster, you breathe faster, and all those kinds of things. He says that's the exact same feeling that you get when you're excited. Is that when you're nervous, just think, I'm excited. I'm excited to tell my story. I'm excited that people are going to care about what I say, instead of using the word nervous. All you have to do is do that mental switch, and you'll be okay.
All right.
All right?
There's a big takeaway. Like, I thought I was good with my words, but you owned me a couple times today where I was using the wrong words in certain places.
Just think about it. Only let words in that empower you and not disempower you. Okay? So if you feel like a word is like, that's not going to help me grow, just find another word for it and you'll be great. Okay?
Okay.
All right, man.